Thank you very much, sir. I would like to invite Mr. Olusegun Adeniyi, Chairman ThisDay Editorial Board, to give a book review.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Senator Baribe said he wanted to be a big man. And everybody was saying that he is already a big man. But fortunately for me, I was seated by his wife. So when they said he is now a big man, Prof said, without a big stomach. But Madam said, without money. I mean, when Senator Baribe got to me that he wants me to review his book, I knew that he was going to celebrate his birthday. When politicians write book, it's to celebrate birthdays. But mostly it's when they are either 50 or 60. And then I saw the title, Made in Aba. I said, this man must be very audacious. The Aba that some of us know, we all know that in Nigeria, Nigerians don't like to buy local things. So we are used to buying things from abroad. So when you talk about made in Aba, I mean, there is a feeling that you're not buying something that is original. And there's a story to that. I remember a few years ago, it was Bishop Cook who told the story. A man left his family and traveled abroad to a far country. He was there after a few years. He wrote his mom that he had found a lady that he wants to marry. And the lady is from that country. After a few more months, he said he had already married. Then one day, he called his mom that my wife just delivered a bouncing baby boy. So the whole time the mom was celebrating, everybody was celebrating. And then on the 8th day, the mother decided to invite people over for get together. I mean, we'll name if you can do your name in there, we'll do our name in here. And as they were having the ceremony, she got a call from the son. What happened? Said the boy just died. The mother said, hey, and they warned me that the thing where they produce for that country, they last. But Senator Abaribe is a made in Aba original. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, allow me to dispense with protocols on a day such as this. We have only known each other from a distance and mostly by reputation. But when Senator Abaribe asked me to review his biography, I did not hesitate. I have followed Senator Abaribe's political career for 2 decades. From his days as an embattled deputy governor in Abia State to his current sojourn in the Senate, where he has become one of the most respected voices. I have always admired his courage of conviction, as well as his ability to put his finger on the flaws and follies of the nation. So it is no surprise that Made in Aba, a life of coincidences, goes beyond his personal story. It also serves as a mirror with which we can view Nigeria. Representing Abia South Senatorial District in the National Assembly, Abaribe is without doubt a household name across Nigeria, a distinguished senator in the truest sense of that most abused turn of phrase in our country today. The quality of his contributions to plenary debates is exceptional. Even when you do not agree with him, and on some issues, I don't, you cannot question the clarity of his thought and his abiding faith in a country that works for everyone. That perhaps explains why this book is so significant, and I've read it. Made in Aba reflects not only the personal struggles of Abaribe, it captures, even if only in brief, critical aspects of Nigerian history. In the main, it is a catalog of coincidences that have helped to shape the life and career of a brilliant and enigmatic politician. Divided into 10 chapters, Made in Aba begins with the account of Abaribe's birth into an average family and his formative years in the rustic town that holds a special place in the hearts of many Igbo people. Instructively, at age 5, when his peers dreamt of being doctors, lawyers, engineers, and pilots, Abaribe was asked what he would like to be in future. He replied simply that he wanted to be a big man. Even as a child, Abaribe knew that doctors, lawyers, and all those professionals work for big men. With the crowd of eminent personalities here today, it is evident that his dream has been realized. But he actually attained that status a long time ago as a manager in SCOA. After any distinction, the highest class in the West African Examination Council results in 1974, Abaribe was offered admission into one of the nation's foremost universities, right in his backyard, the University of Nigeria in Nsukka. Shortly before resumption, he saw an advertisement by the University of Benin calling for fresh students in the new Department of Economics, the same discipline to which he had been admitted by UNN. Out of a sense of adventure, or perhaps just a rebel, Abaribe went to Benin, submitted his application, and was immediately offered both admission and a scholarship. That speaks to a Nigeria where what you know is more important than who you know. But why that promise has been circumscribed, it is not the issue for today. After earning a master's degree in economics, Abaribe was recruited by the neighboring Bender State University, Ekoma, that had just been established by the Second Republic governor, Ambrose Ali. He had been enticed to the university with the promise of scholarship to study abroad that would fully prepare him for life in academia. But things did not turn out that way. Abaribe did not get the scholarship, which the institution chose to award only to sons of the soil. Also a typical Nigerian story we have to overlook for today. With that disappointment, Abaribe's excitement with academia began to wane. He responded to an advertisement for a job in Lagos, and after a process that included a test and interview, he was employed. When Abaribe left Ekoma for Lagos, he also abandoned the doctorate degree program he had almost concluded at the University of Benin. He joined the corporate world as a manager at SCOA, where his exploits were also remarkable. It was from there that fate, what he termed coincidence, propelled him into politics. Abaribe had contested for a House of Representatives seat under the transition program of the late General Sani Abacha and failed. When Abacha died, and there was a reset in the political transition by General Absalami Abubakar, Abaribe wanted to contest again for the same seat, but he ended up being smooth-talked into accepting the position of Abia State gubernatorial running mate in the 1999 election that ushered in the People's Democratic Party. The man who did the smooth talking based on the code calculation of Abia's Joe ethnic configuration is none other than Chief Orji Uzokalu, who took advantage of Abaribe's apparent political naivety. I laughed out loud when I read Abaribe's account of how he was hoodwinked into believing he was going to run the Abia administration as a technocrat, while the governor would merely provide the political gravitas. Such naivety. Meanwhile, as an insider who was a high-ranking public official at the state level, before becoming a high-ranking federal lawmaker, Abaribe is in a position to see the nakedness of Nigeria. And in many areas of this book, he gives readers interesting glimpses. He recounts and confirms the remarkably reckless manner in which government operates in our country, the idleness, the unnecessary oath of loyalty demanded not to serve the people, but to massage some fragile egos, the arrogance of power, and perhaps even worse, the rumor-mongering tradition that has been elevated almost to the level of a constitutional order. Incidentally, the inspiration for Made in Aba arose from an experience in year 2000 While preparing for the burial of his father, Abaribe discovered mementos and documents that told compelling stories that he and his siblings had no inkling of. While their father might have shared fragments from his life at different times, as Abaribe recalled, he never mentioned receiving medals in Burma as a soldier during the Second World War, or that he had an intermediate certificate accounting by correspondence from a London school in 1944. The more Abaribe discovered things he never knew about his father, the more he wondered why the man never documented the drudgery and pains that must have confronted him for posterity. With that, Abaribe resolved that he was going to document his own story. Abaribe's account of his days as deputy governor in Abia State is quite revealing. Deputy governors, Nigerians have been conditioned to believe, are mere spare tires. His own situation was worse. He served in a state where the Oga at the top demanded, almost as an article of faith, that the subordinates crawl on the ground and lose their dignity in order to receive their entitlement. Ironically, as it most often happens in such instances, things that ought to be done for the progress of the people are left undone. In the 1960s, for instance, as the author noted, Aba, the commercial capital of the state, like similar cities across the country, had pipe-on water and a fairly good supply of electricity. But now he asks, why was modern living possible back then and near impossible now? With rich Igbo idioms and interesting anecdotes, Abaribe makes his story compelling by weaving in commentaries, and there are many lessons to take from the narrative. During the Second Republic, for instance, his father supported the Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe-led Nigerian People's Party, while his mother was a sympathizer of the National Party of Nigeria, which produced Alhaji Shehu Shagari as president. That speaks to tolerance and accommodation, virtues to which Abaribe subscribes. Abaribe deplores the notion of going into politics as a profession without any other daytime job, and he explains why. As is to be expected of an Igbo man of his generation, there are also accounts of the Civil War from the eyes of the young boy he then was. But perhaps the most interesting aspects of the book are chapters 6 and 7, which deal with his foray into politics, how he ended up as the Abia State Deputy Governor, and what followed thereafter. In the two chapters, Abaribe offers real glimpses into public service in Nigeria, how politics is, for most of the practitioners, not about public service, but rather about the pursuit of personal interest. From his Lagos to Umuahia Chisco bus night ride in 1988 with Chief Kalu, where they had an interesting conversation about contesting on a Kalu Abaribe ticket to the 1999 gubernatorial election and the drama of the swearing-in day, discerning readers can see how hollow our politics is and how easily clever politicians can overpower the system. In flowing prose, Abaribe painted a pathetic picture of Abia under Kalu, a period when many young people from the state were made to worship not only on the altar erected by the governor, but also the more powerful one, in which Mother Excellency was the deity. As Abaribe succinctly put it, Kalu and his mother became two gods. As a student of power who followed events in the state at that period, I always marveled at how Abia coped with a strong man like Kalu in charge, yes, sharing the limelight with an overbearing mother whose word was also law. Abaribe sheds light on how both the governor and Mother Excellency were clever in ensuring that neither encroached on the other's sphere of influence, as they, and I quote, they tossed people back and forth between them like ping-pong balls. For 8 years, the tag team of Kalu and his mother held Abia State by the jugular. Abaribe provides insight on how they were able to do it. And he was not only a witness to the machinations, he was also a victim. Within a period of less than 4 years that he spent as deputy governor, Abaribe faced 3 impeachment proceedings that were also by the governor and for which the charges were mostly ridiculous. On the first occasion in November 1999, the House of Assembly failed to convict Abaribe because Kalu could not secure the required number. On the second occasion, a year later, the proceedings, according to Abaribe's account, were supervised directly by Mother Excellency, who had reportedly boasted that the first attempt failed because she was out of town. At the end, she also failed because the decisive vote in the House of Assembly was both for and against Abaribe. In one of those it can only happen in Nigerian moments, a member whose vote turned out to be decisive wrote both yes and no, and with that, Abaribe survived, but only just. Ostracized from all state functions, Abaribe remained deputy governor only in name. However, while all interventions by political leaders, including President Olusegun Obasanjo, Governor Adamu Buasu of Bauchi State, and the late Chief Anthony Anini failed, Abaribe on 7th March 2003 decided to resign from office. But neither the governor nor Mother Excellency would allow Abaribe to leave office on his terms. There was a public announcement on Abia State Radio that day that Abaribe had been impeached. In the two chapters titled Swimming Deep End Among Sharks and One Term, Three Impeachments, Abaribe laid bare some of the bizarre happenings in Abia State between 1999 and 2003 when he left office as deputy governor. Kalu, in Abaribe's book, will promise one position to no fewer than 6 persons and will play all of them against one another with no guarantee that any will be offered the job at the end of the day. But Abaribe does not sound bitter. In fact, he somehow exonerates both Kalu and his mother from most of the shenanigans to which the people subjected themselves at that period in Abia State. After all, as a former American First Lady, Eleanor Roosevelt, surmised, nobody can make you inferior without your consent. In Made in Aba, Abaribe also reveals some of the dark aspects of politics in Nigeria. He narrates how he was made to swear before a prophet who, after reading verses from the Bible, insisted on Igbandu, a pact or ritual oath of loyalty, not to the public whose interests were to be served, but to the Godfather, in this case, Oji Kalu. It is indeed interesting that both Kalu and the man he used to bully are now in the upper legislative chambers as principal officers. I will surely love to be a fly on the wall at such meetings involving the duo. Maybe we'll hear from Kalu very soon. Before I take my seat, let me state that Made in Aba is more than an account of the failures of government in Umuahia and Abuja. It is also a tribute to the enterprising character of Indigo. Even their most implacable foes will consider that Igbo people are hard workers, an attribute that is perhaps traceable to their Republican nature. In modern times, as the author noted, many Igbo sons and daughters have continuously featured at the top, be it in commerce, education, and all other spheres, home and abroad. Indeed, by all measures of success in Nigeria today, Indigo have done remarkably well for themselves. But then, Abaribe asked, and these are his exact words, given all the advantages that we as Indigo have in Nigeria, why the clamor by our youth and others for a separate state of Biafra? While he speaks to the mismanagement of post-Civil War issues, Abaribe locates the current problem in the Freudian slip by President Muhammadu Buhari shortly after assuming office in 2015, that those who gave him 5% of the votes in the election that brought him to power should not expect the same attention and patronage as those who gave him 97% of the votes. That the distribution of opportunities in the past 6 years has followed that formula to the disadvantage of Igbo people is what the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, and its sympathizers use as excuse for their campaign, according to Abaribe. But this, Abaribe also argues, is a temporary problem, since President Buhari will not be in power forever. using another Igbo adage to explain his reasoning. 100 years is not the same as forever. In the last chapter, where the author indulged himself in self-praise, he reminds us that Igbos continue to carry scars and a deep memory from Nigeria's struggles to create an equitable country. They have traversed a diverse country and are to be found settled all over Nigeria. In the face of prevailing circumstances, where there's a constant cry of marginalization, they also, like the former Ohanese President, Chief Nwodo, wisely counseled that Indigo should negotiate their place in a restructured Nigeria, where power is devolved to the federating units. He pokes holes in the clamor for succession by IPOB and the manner the operatives demonize respective Igbo citizens who disagree with their separatist agenda. In all, this is one of the few books written by a Nigerian politician that I've enjoyed. I have many in my study that I could not read beyond the first 2 pages. Abaribe is a good record keeper. The documents splashed in the book help to enrich his narrative. Despite a few typographical errors here and there, it's been a pleasure reading through the 241 pages and accompanying appendices of 80 pages. But this is an incomplete book. There is nothing about Abaribe's experience in the Senate, where he has spent the past 14 years. Abaribe is one of the few lawmakers in Abuja today who must know where all the legislative dead bodies are buried. Given his candor, I don't want to impute that Abaribe left out those details because he is observing the Nigerian table manners of don't talk while eating. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me conclude by stating that this is a fascinating book. I wholeheartedly recommend it for all those who seek a better understanding of our country and its politics. As Dr. Chidi Amuta stated in one of the 2 forwards, Abaribe has managed to rise above the narrow personal undertaking of just his life story to reflect on what he considers the Nigerian ideal. And that is precisely why this book is important. In the end, Made in Aba reminds us of the consequences of the choices not made, roads not taken, and injustices that define the character of the Nigerian state, for which we are all paying a price. The sad reality is that this is a heavy price we did not have to pay at all. Thank you very much for listening. Good afternoon.
Thank you very much, sir, for the book review.